Feels like it's missing something. I know. God damn it, Konami, what did you do this time? Okay, people. Chef here to talk about the new time rules. I know I'm super late on the new time rules. However, I wanted to actually participate in a big event before I gave my opinion on it. I feel like, even though I'm not very optimistic about it and I have a very negative opinion on it, I feel like I should at least withhold it until I participated in an actual, like, real event. You know, give them the benefit of the doubt. That's the least I can do, right? And basically everything I thought was confirmed. So we're still going to give them the benefit of the doubt. There are pros to this, as you can see on the screen, but there are also cons, and lots of them. So the question here is, does do the pros outweigh the cons, or vice versa? I think you already know what my opinion on it is. No, let's start with the pros. Konami has been on well, sorry. So the events are ending at a far more reasonable time. In the past we've had Nats go on to like 2 in the morning, uh, day one of Nats, like, of the actual tournament. It was over. I think I finished at like 10, so like got shaven off like 4 hours. Um, that's a big deal. It's a very big deal, and it should not be something to be overlooked. Now, there's also less time to wait between rounds as well. So when you finish your round, you typically can just go straight into the next one. Maybe have like half an hour or something. But like there were times I remember one round at like YCS San Diego. I think I had to wait like over an hour for my next round. Um, you know, so that like never happened locally. Um, Next one, this one's big. Less stress on and cost for Konami event organizers, the convention centers themselves, the judges and the staff. Especially those last two, the judges and staff. No one in the Yu-Gi-Oh community is as less appreciated as the judges and staff at these events. It's a very thankless job. I don't personally want to be in that position. It sounds awful. It sounds like a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety. And on top of that, going on sometimes till 2 in the morning and not knowing when you're going to be able to get home is pretty brutal. So anything to lessen that on them and to have less abuse thrown their way, the better, in my opinion. So that's the biggest plus for me, is what it does for the judges and staff. There's a reason why they're the ones who are most excited about this, and they're the reason why they're the only people I've heard say anything positive about these new rule changes, is judges and staff. However, is it really worth compromising the game itself for the majority of the players to benefit a smaller portion of the overall player base? I don't think I have any real right to say on that. I'll leave that one up to you. But that's a big one. So on top of this, it also like breathes new life into certain strategies, such as trick stars and arrow mages. You know, all the jokes about this being the greatest trick star support ever printed is no exaggeration. His life points finally matter now. Everyone, throughout the cost of the game, they've always said, "Oh, your life points don't matter till they hit 0." That's why like cards like Upstart Goblin, doesn't matter that you give your opponent 1,000 life. Who the hell cares if you have to pay half your life points if you get to negate anything? Or, who cares if I have to pay half my life for a card that summons Dark Law? Like, it summons Dark Law. It's like, I'll pay half my life points to win the duel? Okay. Sure. Your life points before this did not matter until they were 0. Now you actually have to think about your life points and take it into consideration because it matters so much more. It makes us rethink cards that were good in the past and ask if they're really worth it. Top of the list there being the Solemn Brigade. Is it really worth paying that 4,000, that 2,000, that 1,500 life? Do you really want to take that chance? Because you don't like I personally play a lot of going second decks, so I don't really like having Solemns in the main. They would always go in my side deck. And now they're not really in there because why would I side them going into games 2 and 3 when more often than not there's not going to be enough time left on the clock to actually properly use them. So that can also be a con depending on how you view it. I think it's kind of a pro. I think it makes life points a bit more strategic. I think they matter a bit more. I think you really have to think about them and how much time is left in the round now, whereas you didn't before, because you could just scoop up and go into the next game and have your 5 turns or 3 turns depending on the event, or 4 turns, I suppose, where each player gets 2. But so let's move on to the cons, because they're pretty hefty. For one, it it compromises the integrity of the game from a competitive standpoint because it rushes gameplay, which causes far more misplays than what would otherwise happen, as well as miscalculations of life points and irreparable game states. The next one surprises me, which is tons of draws. Like, I knew that this was going to be the case, but I was super surprised that Konami did this because, Konami has in the past shown a hatred for draws by banning cards like Self-Destruct Button and changing card text such as Ring of Destruction so that it can't cause draws. They've always seemed to really hate draws. They always want a winner. It just sort of makes time far less strategic. I said before that it makes life points a little bit more strategic. I feel like that's sort of far outweighed by how less strategic time is now. Now you make all these bad plays just because the clock is ticking down, just to get in some chip damage, and you overextend and make these terrible plays. So you're being rewarded with a win for making bad plays, and playing poorly. It causes a lot of problems with entering and exiting phases, which people use to rule shark their opponent, and they do this within the confines of the rules, so they therefore can't be reprimanded. Now, it should be noted that Konami and their judges have been on top of this a bit, where they'll come over and they will check your opponent's stuff to make sure that they actually had something that they could activate. The thing is, they could just have an effect veiler in hand that's not going to negate anything, that can't realistically do anything, but they can still activate it, and they win because they had a card that was chainable, whether or not it was good enough to activate in that instance anyway, which is slow play. It is, but that's how it's been ruled. It's been allowed. It also severely cripples and handicaps certain decks, where it sort of buffs decks like Trickstars, decks such as Pure Sky Striker, which otherwise would be really good, are down to having 2 spots in the entire top cut at Nats, because it's just awful with the new time rules, and it shows how great they would be otherwise, because they do fantastic in top cut. It's just in Swiss, they're awful because Swiss goes by the new time rules. The other thing, the second biggest thing for me is, it rewards and encourages malicious slow play, which is cheating. And it also works in reverse, where someone can call you out for maliciously slow playing as well, and then the clock can be run down waiting for a judge, and you can possibly get a loss for it, But yeah, anything that rewards people for cheating is kind of a big deal. Then we have, there are just a lot of things out of Konami's control as well. I guess it's technically not out of their control. They could have done something about this next one. When time is as important as it is, you have to be able to see the clock. There have been regionals where there wasn't a clock up, that people have gone to. That's kind of a big deal. Or where they turn off the clock, when there's 10 minutes left. Which, when it's that important of a thing, you kind of need that there. And at Nats, there were places in the venue where you could not see the timer from, and you can't bring out your phone to time it yourself because you can't have your phone out. So you can't see the time, and what's worse is the opponent would be able to see the clock, and you wouldn't be able to see the clock from certain parts of the venue. So just based on where you have to sit, you're at an inherent disadvantage. based on something completely out of your control. Just because Konami didn't put up enough clocks. You know, my one of my opponents, I think it was my round 8 opponent, maybe? It was like round 8, maybe 9. One of my last opponents of the night. He was playing Goki, really nice guy. You know, he told me like he couldn't see the clock until round 4. He legitimately did not see the clock until round 4. That's unacceptable. That is completely unacceptable. If we are going to have to deal with these new time rules, then the clock needs to be viewable by everyone in the venue from any position in the venue at all times. If it's going to be this important and it's going to be costing people games and rounds when they've come this far, you know, and flown in and paid for hotels and paid for their deck just to lose because of the table that they got placed at not having view of the clock. That's not fair. That is awful. And that round, my opponent was able to see the clock, and I wasn't. He knew how much time was left in the round. I couldn't tell how much time was in the round. And the biggest thing, the number one thing, is losing to time now feels awful. Even compared to losing in time before, or just losing in general, it really feels terrible now. Like, nothing else in the game really quite feels as bad as losing to time now. Because you'll be in a situation where you would have otherwise won the game, but you lose because of time, when you would have won. And there's nothing that feels worse than losing a game you should have won to something not really in your control. You know, like you can be up, you can have, you know, a total of like 16 cards in your opponent's top decking, but they call time in the round and you lose. You know, just when you're clearly the one winning, and you lose for being conservative and playing your deck correctly and playing well, and your opponent is now rewarded for playing poorly and losing. I don't understand in what world this is good or fair. My experiences so far with the time rules have been highly negative, but I wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to do this pros and cons thing. It's not entirely negative. There are good things about it, but I just don't personally feel like the pros outweigh the cons. In fact, the only one that I honestly care about in the pros is, for one, events ending at a reasonable time, but that's more because of what it does for judges and everything I said before. So the less stress on like judges and staff, and it ending at a reasonable time for them, and then being able to like go home or back to their hotels and not having to be there till 2 in the morning. You know, that's it's a big deal, and it's not something that I want to discount at all. It's very important. Something needed to be done about that. I just don't think this is what needed to be done. I just don't feel like this, you know, is the right way of going about it. And I feel like it hurts the game as a whole. But that's all I have to say about this for now. This is Chef, signing out. Peace, people. Now, Konami has actually been on top of disqualifying players who are maliciously slow playing and have been using it to weed out the bad eggs. However, some people are being DQ'd when they're not actually maliciously slow playing, and some people are getting game losses for it. Then there was one person who built a deck that was specifically built to do nightmare plays that last the entire round just to end on a cowboy. They got disqualified for abusing the time rules, even though they were making legitimate plays within the confines of the rules. Despite this, it is an abuse of the rules and the system, and I feel like that kind of DQ is well deserved. It's a very scummy thing to do, but the question here is it really any more scummy than, say, bringing Nurse Burn? You know, like, I don't really think it's more scummy than something like that. I think it's sort of like on an equal level. But, yeah. You know, that person couldn't have possibly known what they were doing was, you know, going to get them DQ'd or get them in any kind of trouble. I'm behind that decision. I just wish that it was something that was actually, like, announced and said with the new rules that you can't do something like that. Because as the rules were written and stated, he was fully within the rules and his rights to do what he did and not be DQ'd for it. But, you know, he made a 40-minute turn nightmare deck that ends on a cowboy, so fuck him, right?